Hey there, Nopenguin here. I am a rogue player, and this is Let's Build. As the great rogue player Sun Tzu once said, to defeat meta decks, you must first understand them. That's why in this video series, I will take a modern deck, learn it, and give you the tools and understanding you need to defeat the meta sheep. With that said, let's build Swordsoul Tenyi. Before we get started, I just want to say subscribe, please. I need it! Welcome to another episode of Let's Build. Today, we will be talking about Swordsoul Tenyi. Now, for those of you who did not see, Swordsoul Tenyi actually took first place at the North American Nationals. However, I am not using that list. Why? Mystic Mine. But enough about that specific list, let's talk about the deck as a whole. Swordsoul Tenyi is the deck that brings together two separate worm strategies. The Swordsoul package focuses on summoning out Swordsoul tokens, which act as tuners for the deck. Each Swordsoul monster has an effect that will summon out one of these tokens, as well as an effect when used as a synchro material. The Tenyi engine focuses on having non-effect monsters, which synergizes beautifully with the token generation of Swordsoul. The Tenyis help with synchro plays while also being a board breaking and resource generation package. The two decks mesh amazingly together, so much so that you basically never see them apart from each other. But with that, let's get into the card by card and meet our worm overlords. Firstly, let's start with our honorary Swordsoul, Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. She has three separate effects, but we only care about the first two. Her first effect allows you to special summon her from the hand as long as your opponent controls more monsters than you. This is fantastic for playing into established boards, baiting out interaction before expending your normal, and her second and main effect is that you can tribute her to summon any Swordsoul from your hand or deck. And to top it off, this one is a quick effect. There is no reason not to max out on Ecclesia. Next we have Moye, our main starter for the deck. When summoned, you can reveal a worm or a Swordsoul card in your hand to summon a token. The Swordsoul tokens are all level 4 water worm monsters that are tuners as well. And when Moye is sent to the graveyard for a synchro summon, you could draw a card. This effect, like all the other Swordsoul monsters, can chain block the effect of the monster you summon. Next, we have Taya, who I only play 2. Some decks will opt to play it at 1, but I enjoy having the extra Taya. Its effect is an ignition effect that you can banish a worm in your graveyard to special summon a token. And when Taya is sent to the graveyard, you can dump a worm from your deck to the grave. You can also dump the Swordsoul spell and traps, but most likely you're going to be sending a worm. Finally, we have the thick Swordsoul himself, Longwan. This card can summon itself by discarding a worm or a Swordsoul card from your hand, and on resolution of its summon, it special summons a token. It activates in hand and summons itself and a token on resolution, so you are unable to Veiler or Infib this. And when Longwan is sent to the graveyard, you can just burn your opponent for 1200. Cause it's 2022, and decks are contractually obligated to have a way to burn in time. On to our Tenyis. All of these cards have the effect that you can special summon it from your hand as long as you control no effect monsters. And each also have an effect in the grave if you control a non-effect monster. To start us off, we have Ashana. We play 3 of it, as in my opinion, it's the best one. Banish it from the grave while you control a non-effect monster to special summon any Tenyi from the deck, but then you are locked into worms and monsters for the remainder of the turn. The only thing this affects is it stops you from summoning Barone after activating this. Ashuna allows us to do many great combos, including summoning a Chaofane that prevents your opponent from using light effects, like Nibiru or Veiler, all before using your normal summon. There is literally no reason to not play this at 3. Then we have Vishuddha, the best Tenyi going second. Banish it from your graveyard to target a card your opponent controls and bounce it. The fact that we have a Link 1 non-effect monster means you could just summon this, link it off, and then immediately use this effect without even expending your normal summon. It is a great way to break boards. Then we play 2 Adhara. Adhara has 2 great things about it. One, it is a level 1 tuner, which combined with the level 7 Tenyi, makes for very easy level 8 plays. Its grave effect allows you to banish itself to add a banished worm monster to your hand. Important to note, it can be any worm monster, not just a Tenyi. This becomes important where you add a Swordsoul starter back to your hand after banishing off of Taya's effect. Finally, we play the 1 Shinthana. Its effect states when a non-effect monster we control is destroyed, banish this card, then target one of those destroyed monsters, special summon it back, then on resolution, non-target destroy an opponent's monster. This card is great as a defensive tool when your opponent breaks your board, or you can proc it yourself with Blackout, giving you a way to out non-targetable monsters. Also, this can be used as a combo tool with Baxia's second effect. It is a card I highly recommend playing as it has so much utility. As for hand traps, we are playing triple Ash Blossom and triple Infinite Impermanence. These are just the hand traps of choice for myself. They can be whatever you want. On to the spells, we play 3 Swordsoul Emergence. It is a Rhoda for Swordsoul or any worm monster if you control Synchro. Also, if this card is banished, you can reduce or increase the level of a Swordsoul monster you control. Banishing this card with Taya is how we access Yazi in this deck, in case you were wondering. Next, we play 2 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. But if you control a non-effect monster, you can also add a Tenyi with a different name than the monster we sent to the graveyard. Imagine if Foolish Burial also allowed you to special summon a monster from your deck. That's basically what this does. It's insane. Then we have 2 Heavenly Dragon Circle. A quick effect spell, tribute a worm to add a worm from your deck. If you tribute a non-effect monster, you can special summon that monster, but its effects are negated. We use this card mostly to play around Interruption, but it also makes for a fun bit of resource generation paired with Blackout. Because Blackout only needs to target the worm you control, it doesn't have to destroy it. So what you can do is you could use Blackout, target a worm you control and 2 cards your opponent controls, then we can chain the circle to then tribute that worm we control to get a search off while still popping the 2 cards the opponent controls. It's great. Interesting to note, the national winning list had 3 each of Emergence and Circle, but no Vessel. Next, we have the best draw card for the deck, Desires. God bless Konami for giving us 2 again. This deck can banish 10 with very little issue. Also, because we are banishing 10 cards, it makes our Chen-Ying huge right out of the gate. And one of the best cards currently printed, we are playing triple Forbidden Droplets. I love this card. Going first or second, I would love to see this in my hand. Finally, Call by the Grave. It's good. Finally, 1 Swordsoul Blackout. To put it simply, it's searchable Icarus attack. Target a worm you control and 2 cards your opponent controls, destroy them. Since it's searchable from Qishao, 1 is more than enough. Now, onto the extra, where the real fun begins. To start us off, the first of our Swordsoul synchros, Chen-Ying. My favorite of the level 10 Swordsouls. It gains 100 attack for each banished card, and your opponent's monsters also lose 100 for each as well. And if it would be destroyed, you can banish a card from your graveyard instead. Now what makes this card amazing is the next effect. When a card is banished, you can banish 1 card from your opponent's field and graveyard. This effect does not target. This card, alongside Qishao, make for a very hard to play around board. Next, we have Barone. Longyong is a 1 card level 10 synchro, so this is super easy to make in the deck. The deck really likes having the option of an Omni Negate, and if you're looking to play this deck in any real tournament setting, having this is crucial. Our other level 10 Swordsoul is Qixing, or Evil Long One if you will. This card has 3 separate effects. Firstly, it's Hyper Librarian. When another worm is synchro summoned, you can draw a card, but only once per turn. Effect 2. If your opponent special summons a monster, you can banish one of those monsters they summon, then inflict 1200. But we're not done burning the opponent just yet. Effect 3. If your opponent activates a spell or trap card, or their effects, banish it and inflict 1200. This effect is fantastic against adventurer decks. You can chain this to the activation of Fateful Adventure's effect and banish it before it can resolve. Between both of these effects and Long One, you can burn the opponent for 3600 in total. Next, we play Qiaofeng. Qiaofeng has a Floodgate type effect. While it's on the field, your opponent cannot activate effects with the same attribute of Yangtze monsters used for its summon. Nearly 100% of the time you will have Baxia for this summon, so you'll be locking your opponent from light monsters. You can technically summon this with Yazi, it just basically never happens. When it's destroyed, you get to add a tuner, but its last effect is quite interesting. When your opponent's monster is destroyed, you can special summon a worm from your deck with the same attributes. Between the Tenyi and Swordsoul cards, you have access to pretty much every attribute with this effect. Next, I play Dragite. This is our 1 flex spot. I've seen a lot of different uses for this slot, one funny one being Crimson Blader. I chose to play Dragite because it gives us a kind of negation we otherwise don't have access to in our level 8s. Also, it's used quite often in my Penguin deck, so it's near and dear to my heart. Draco Berserker. If your opponent's monster activates its effect, you can banish it. Also, it could gain attack and get a second attack when destroying a monster by battle. Fantastic for closing out games. Next, we play 2 Chixiao, our main boss monster. On summon, you can search any Swordsoul card. Depending on your hand, you will either grab another starter, or you will grab the trap. Also, on a quick effect, you could banish a worm or Swordsoul card to negate the effects of a face-up monster. Simple, but effective. The other 2 we have is Baxia. Baxia serves 2 purposes. Going first, it's a combo tool we use to extend our plays, like summoning back a Taya or a Moye, or even going into Chaofeng by summoning Adhara. Then of course, when summoned, you can shuffle cards your opponent controls up to the amount of different attributes used for its summon. In most cases, you're going to be shuffling 2 cards. The only time you spin 1 card is when you summon this with Moye, but every other combination has 2 attributes of worms. Our last synchro is Yazi. Not often you go into this, but having a non-targetable spot removal is insanely good. And then when you do use this destruction effect, you can then special summon a worm from your deck. Onto our links, we have 1 Shaman of the Tenyi. You can discard a card to monster reborn a worm in your graveyard. However, after this effect resolves, it prevents you from activating the effects of non-Tenyi monsters summoned from the extra. After you resolve this effect, you're not going to want to go into Chixiao, you're not going to want to go into Baxia, you cannot use those effects. This is one of the 2 locks that we have to keep in mind. Finally, triple Monk. I would argue that Monk is the single most important card in the extra deck. Without it, the Tenyi engine is pretty much useless. It lets you link off any Tenyi and then go into a non-effect. Then, you can special summon another Tenyi from your hand, and you are able to activate your Tenyi grave effects. It cannot be overstated how good this card is. That is why we have to play 3. As always, a sample side deck below, but your side will likely be influenced on the event you're going to. But with that, let's go into the replays. Let's play Swordsoul Tenyi. Our replay today is up against Punk Eldritch Adventurer. They get to go first and I have 0 hand traps. They have the Right of Artemis here, so they will just go Fateful Adventure to grab the Griffin Rider. Unfortunately, I have nothing to stop them here, so they are able to go ahead, equip with the Draco back, then add the Eldritch, and they'll go ahead and set the Zealman and pass turn. Luckily, I have the Infib, so I can get this Griffin Rider out of my way so I can go into Vishuddha. Vishuddha will summon itself, go into Monk. Then we'll use Vessel sending a Taya. This is important. I'll special summon the Adhara I just added, Vishuddha to bounce back the Unknown Zealman. Then I'll Pot of Desires drawing. Ooh, Blackout's good. I'm going to Moe here, go ahead, summon a token. I'm going to go into Baxia. Baxia is only going to let me send 1 because I've used the Moe, but that's more than fine because Baxia's second effect is what we're looking for. We're going to summon back the Taya, use this effect to summon a token, and they have Nibiru. Luckily I have the circle so I can go ahead and search out the long one, and there goes my entire board. But I have a non-effect monster, so I can use it hard to special summon out to grab back a Made Monkey to Tenyi. Then I'll grab back Moye, go ahead and special summon the long one, get out at level 10. We actually just to go into Chenying. Chenying's already 4,300, which is a lot. I did make a bit of a mistake here, as I should have done the Adhara into Monk play after, so I could get some more damage in with banishing with the Chenying, but it doesn't matter. Cursed Eldon here, I'm going to negate that effect. Fateful Adventure will go ahead and grab their Water Enchantress. They banish the cards, so I get to get their Eldritch right out of here. They're going to go Right of Artemis here, and this is the point where I'm going to Blackout. I'm going to destroy all their cards, and all they have left is this Ailment. They summon it, go into Almirage, go into Arborea, and I thought I was going to go for the access code line, but they do not play the Selene, unfortunately. So from here, I am just going to pop off a bit. They'll go into the Shooting Riser, go ahead and activate my effect to pitch Sangan. I think at this point they've pretty much given up, as when I start to go into my Moye, they just go ahead and concede. And we are back. As you can see, Swordsoul is a deck that can build a board going first or even going second, even through cards like Nibiru. But now that we've learned how to play it, let me teach you how to beat it. If you were looking for cards to side against for this matchup specifically, these are the 5 I would recommend. As you saw in that gameplay, Nibiru hurt us hard, and if the opponent waited for just a bit longer, I may not have been able to recover and actually build a board. The fact that it summons a non-effect monster to your field is funny, and does help us with rebuilding, but a well-timed Nibiru can end your turn. Then we have Token Collector. This is the card to side against this deck. I hate this goddamn card. Whenever we summon a token, you special summon this, destroy all the tokens, and now you cannot summon any more tokens. And because the tokens function as our tuners, we're basically locked out of the game and have to just go to battle. And the budget pick of the day is Ghost Ogre. While not as game-ending as the other two here, chaining this to a Moye or a Taiya's effect to destroy the monster, leaving him with just a token, sometimes may be good enough. Then we have Dimensional Barrier. This is just a pain to deal with. If you lock us out of our Synchro Summons for the turn, there really isn't much we could do without our Synchros, so this is an insanely powerful card and one that I hate being played against. Finally, Teekboo. For any of you who saw the National Winnings list, they main decked Rivalry because we only need one attribute of monster. But on the flip side, if Teekboo is up, it highly eliminates us as we aren't able to summon any of our tokens, we aren't able to go into any of our synchros, and if I'm being perfectly honest, we can't do anything under Teekboo. But that is the deck. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any other deck you would like me to build, please let me know. We have very little time until the format is completely on fire, so I want to get a couple of these out. But on that note, like if you like, subscribe if you want to see more. I am Nopenguin, Mystic Mind Hater, signing out.